This is a beautiful, beautiful theater. I feel like it is going to be wasted on me for the next 35 minutes. And I also feel a little self-conscious because I have to follow people who are landing rovers on Mars and developing engineering that lets us manipulate things with our brains like Professor X. Like, I make cute mascots for websites. Yep, it's a job. You can have that job. It is possible. Yeah, it's amazing. The internet's amazing. So unfortunately, I'm responsible for hopefully, I think, a lot of your lack of productivity for co-founding Reddit. Hopefully, I can make up for that with Hitmonk, which I like to think helps people find flights and hotels a lot faster than they would have otherwise, so they can go back to the things that matter, like cat photos. But I don't want to talk about mascots per se. I want to talk about the internet and the reason why it is having such an amazing impact on so many of us. And I hope if I do my job well, you all will go forth and do amazing things of your own. Now, just to get a quick survey of the audience, how many of you right now are learning to code or are yourselves developers? Just by show of hands, can we get, yes, excellent, thank you. Make note, for the few of you who did not have your hands up, those people have the most valuable skill of this century and will be running the world, all right? The Forbes list is gonna have far fewer managers in this century and far more people who are builders and makers and doers. And if we agree that software is eating the world, it would really help to be able to write it. That's part of the reason why I'm doing this crazy tour. The book came out and then I decided let's go to 150 locations, 75 of which are universities, because I want to make sure that a whole nother generation of undergrads realize the potential and the power for all of this. But more to the point, I saw a lot of hands go up. Are there any of you in particular who are really, really proud of something that you're working on right now? Some kind of project, just by show of hands. Would you, actually, the first hand, would you actually be comfortable coming up here to pitch it, just for a minute? Would that be cool? Yeah. All right, can we clap it up? Let's do some Compute Midwest clapping, all right? This was not planned, because if it were planned, I would have chosen to put my plant somewhere closer to the stage. So thank you for getting up, I'm sorry. And real quick while you get up here, I know I'm here in Kansas City. Are there any Chiefs fans out there? Yeah. Ooh, okay, a few not Chiefs fans, but a lot of Chiefs fans. Congratulations. You guys are not in my division, so I have no qualms with you all being undefeated. What a difference a year makes, right? Amazing, amazing stuff. Anyway, please, let's pitch the world.
All right, my name is Ben Cottrell. I'm the co-founder of DoodleKit. DoodleKit is an online website builder. We created it because it has been cumbersome for people to create websites themselves, and so we're trying to empower people, small businesses, people without a lot of budget, non-for-profit groups, to create websites themselves, maintain them themselves so they don't have to get into expensive contract negotiation, things like that. Is that what you wanted? Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, DoodleKit?
Yeah.
All right, here first, also, sign copy.
Oh, okay.
Because cool. That was the exact embodiment. So doodlekit.com is where they can all go? Yeah. Awesome, doodlekit.com. One more round of applause, because this proves, and that was not a plant, again. And thank you for having the courage to come up here. And is there an easy way down? Oh, Jesus, I clearly did not plan this well. Thank you. Okay, this proves an important point, which was a lesson that I was lucky enough to learn while I was an undergrad, which is every one of us has amazing ideas, but what makes a difference between those of us who have the ideas and actually do them, actually execute them, are the ones who are willing to put their hands up and do something that sometimes makes them feel a little uncomfortable, that involves them to put forth those ideas to the world. So I thank you for coming up here and making me look right, as well as vaulting up on this rather daunting stage. But here, this isn't just about mascots, and it's not just about startups. It's actually about facial hair. And it's not about facial hair. But Tom Friedman has an amazing mustache, but that does not change the fact that he is wrong. We have NASA scientists here to confirm this, although I think the Greeks figured it out a long time ago. The world is, in fact, not flat. It's not. It's a catchy headline, but it's not flat. However, the World Wide Web is, and it is at once the world's largest library as well as largest stage all in one, and it is pretty damn cool. I'm willing to bet most of you will agree it is not a fad. And as long as all links are created equal, it means that we are able to take ideas to the world like never before. And that's pretty great, not just because it lets us share cat photos, but because it gives us power. It really gives us power. And it makes me so happy because this is a good kind of barometer for the audience. I've been places and I've been made to feel very old because people did not respect the power glove. So thank you. I'm glad I'm among peers here. And I know this is probably not the best metaphor because, the power glove is actually a really terrible accessory. It's not actually that useful at all. You don't want to actually use it for any serious gaming. But the point is, it is very powerful. And the way that I think about this, because more and more of the incumbents are realizing this, slowly but surely they're realizing this. However, there's a fundamental difference between them and those of us who know this almost fundamentally because we have a certain kind of fluency with technology, whether we've grown up with it or just simply been really keen about it. And I always refer to Bain, which is dangerous. I know it's dangerous to quote Bain. But the idea that I have is this, that Bain fundamentally understood that while Batman merely adopted the darkness, he was born in it and molded by it. And similarly, those who were born in and molded by the internet and software understand it in a way that those who merely adopt it never will. Because as they look forward and realize their business models are changing, as they realize their industry is being affected, will still be feeling like this. Wonderful, endearing grandma. She's on the right track. She's on the right track, and I love her for it, because yes, there is the Netflix, and you should check it out. But this is sort of how one feels. And in fact, the reason why I asked earlier about how many of you write code is because for so many of us who are non-technical, now I lucked out because my freshman year roommate, Steve Huffman, happened to be extremely talented. He convinced me within a few games of Gran Turismo that I was not necessarily cut out to write code. And I actually regret that decision. I was writing code until I got to college, and I took a couple of classes there at UVA, and I stopped. And now as the sort of non-technical guy who orders the takeout as well as deals with the lawyers and draws mascots person, I really insist on so many people to learn that skill so you don't end up looking like this grandma. Because look, at the end of the day, you remember who said this quote? One of the best thinkers of the modern age. You remember? Everyone. Every single person thinks they have a great idea. Everyone does. No one ever comes up to you breathless and is like, I gotta tell you this terrible, terrible idea. It is awful, but just give me 5 minutes. It's gonna change your life. It is terrible, right? No one. We all think we have great ideas, and that's fine. We should. But the difference between having a great idea and actually doing it is a vast gulf that I cannot get enough people to get themselves over. And it is so important because it's going to make all the difference, right? Everyone has great ideas. They are worthless, and execution is everything. No matter how much Justin Timberlake you add to something, it does not make it a startup. Social Network was an entertaining film, but probably not the best course of action for one to follow if you're looking to get into entrepreneurship. But look, this may make us feel bad, right? We may facepalm a lot when we encounter this sort of situation, but there is a remedy. There is absolutely a remedy, and it involves failing. Now, the Starbucks thing will make sense in a moment, because before Reddit, and I want you to remember, we started it right out of college. So by our junior year of college, I had talked myself out of law school, thanks to a Waffle House. Hopefully there's some Waffle Houses here, and you guys all know what I'm talking about. Amazing, amazing. I seriously had a Waffle House epiphany, realized I did not want to be a lawyer, and instead just wanted waffles and had to figure out something else to do with my life. And I went to Steve and I was like, dude, come on, please, we got to do something together. Let's live like college students for as long as possible. Let's make software. Let's do this. We can work in our pajamas and we'll wear sandals and eat pizza. And he was like, I don't know. He had a job lined up. He just was very skeptical. But we had a lot of discussions and he had some good ideas. One of which, remember this is 2004, 2005, was to avoid lines. Was to not deal with waiting in line for the same Frappuccino, but to place the order using your mobile device just a few blocks away. Now, of course, the phones weren't the smartest back then. There was a company called Palm that existed back then that had a Trio device with a stylus. You remember? Those were dark times. That was basically the smartest phone on the market. And the only other way to get your apps onto phones was making awful, awful deals with cell phone carriers, if you were lucky enough to do so. But we thought we can get over this. We can get this app on people's phones and we can get rid of lines forever. It's going to be amazing. We can call it My Mobile Menu, or which we were happy with. We were pretty proud of that. And so we thought, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to, I talked Steve out of taking this job at a software company that had pretty much offered it to him. I said, as soon as you graduate, Steve, come on and work for us. And Steve agreed to basically live like college students for an indefinite period of time without health insurance or income, making And we thought, we're going to do it. Now, somewhere along the way, I applied for an entrepreneurship class at the University of Virginia, which they did not let me take. That's another story, but one that they don't love me sharing, but it's in the book, so well. However, something magical happened, and it was during senior year spring break. As a place where often magical things happen. Steve and I, going to school there in Charlottesville, Virginia, we had our senior year spring break. So of course, we were not here because there is too much screen glare to use a laptop on it. The internet connectivity is usually terrible. It's just not worth it. Instead, we were up in Boston because we heard of a guy named Paul Graham, who Steve had really respected and read a lot of his essays, was giving us a talk called How to Start a Startup. And we thought, well, we're starting a startup. This seems like a very relevant talk. Paul's a pretty respected figure, and what else are we going to do on spring break? So we went up there. We heard him give his talk. And afterward, we met him and were able to convince him to sit down and pitch him on And he actually liked it. He actually said, you've got a pretty good shot. You actually have a pretty decent shot. I think you're onto something. And so we felt amazing, right? Seniors in college. We just met this guy who we really respected, and he actually said we had a pretty good shot. So we felt even better when a few weeks later he announced Y Combinator. And it was perfect, right? He's creating this program that invests a little bit of money in founders with little to no experience who just want to build something great. And so we applied, and we got accepted for an interview, and we went up for the interview, and we nailed it. We did an amazing job, and they rejected us. That sucked. Are you laughing? Is that Schadenfreude? That was Schadenfreude right there, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. They rejected us, and it sucked, and we drank, and the next morning, hungover, on the way back to Virginia on a very long train ride, I got a call, and it was Paul. Paul Graham said, listen, we still don't like your idea. I was like, oh, damn, you called to tell us no. And he's like, we like you guys, and we think as long as you're willing to get rid of this company, as long as you're going to kill off this idea you spent the last year working on, we'll let you in the program. Just come up with anything else. Like, all right. Can't take it too personally. I mean, keep in mind, we were of the generation that got participation trophies for everything, right? So this was, I went back to my dorm room to my 8 basketball camp participation trophies, and I thought, well, gosh, darn it, all right. No, but in all seriousness, we took about 5 seconds to kill off that old idea and got right on the next train back up to Boston. Went up there, sat with Paul, span of about an hour, and he just said, listen, what is a problem you all have? Solve a problem in a browser. Don't mess with mobile. It's too early. Pre-app store, pre all that stuff. Solve a problem you have. What do you do every morning? And Steve said, I read Slashdot every morning. He said, okay, all right, and what do you do? And I just had gotten into tabs. This Firefox had just launched tabbed browsing, right? This is a big freaking deal. So every morning I'd have all these tabs open, all these news websites. I was like, oh, this is amazing. And he's like, do either one of you feel like you have a good sense for what's going on, what's new and interesting online? And we said, no. And he said, all right, work on that. And we're like, okay, what about He was like, stop thinking about It's like, all right. We looked at each other, and we got to this point where we felt pretty good about sort of what we wanted to make. And at some point, Paul encapsulated it so well. He said, you are making the front page of the internet. That's what you're going to do. And we looked at each other. Remember, we had just graduated. We hadn't even graduated from college yet. And Steve and I looked at each other like, yeah, okay. Yeah, we will make the front page of the internet, Paul. We can do that. Yes, we will. No, we put on the best poker face that we could and went back to Virginia feeling great because we had tricked them into giving us money to work for at least another 3 months after graduation. Now, what's special about this is that this is the two of us. This is the first photo taken of Steve and me as soon as we entered Y Combinator. And I use this to draw your attention to a few things. One, Steve actually looks the exact same to this day because he's a vampire. It is uncanny and terrifying. You thought Keanu Reeves was ageless? No. Enter Steve Huffman. But at this time, even Y Combinator did not really know what it was doing. It was a very new kind of idea. Everyone was still trying to feel their way out. And here we were we were trying to tell people with a straight face that we, 22-year-olds, were going to build the front page of the internet, right? And in reality, we had no idea No idea. And I bring this up very often because by the time you see people on stage in front of you, it may seem like, oh, they got it all figured out. Of course, it's all figured out. They don't, all right? No one actually has it all figured out. And if they do, they're either lying or delusional, or they're just not trying hard enough, right? We are perpetually in a state of failing and learning. And if I may quote a wonderful cartoon dog in a post-apocalyptic universe, sucking, some of you know the Adventure Time, sucking is the first step to being sort of good at something. And that, it is so true. It's okay to suck a little at first. It really is, because you have to be comfortable with the fact that no one actually really knows what they're doing. No expert actually has it all figured out. Now, it's a little, don't get me wrong, it's a little unsettling next time you go to the doctors and you're just like, are you just making this up? But, and that's not to, and I'm not totally slaying expertise here. It's more to the point that we are constantly finding ourselves in new situations where we just have to use our best judgment and kind of just hack it. But none of us has it all figured out. So do not ever let, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing, stop you from whatever ambition, whatever journey you want to take. Because that should be the last thing on your mind. Because look, this, and I'm not proud showing this is the first screenshot ever of Reddit.com. This was June of 2005. Geez, you're already laughing. This is a very sadistic crowd. I know. We were crappy at web design, okay? But the point is, look, it's embarrassing. It's still embarrassing. And I'll admit, Reddit will probably not win any beauty contests today. But still, back then, this is the first version we got online. And you'll notice a few things from it, all right? Now, one, you'll notice it's pretty Spartan. That was because Paul sent us an email about 3 weeks into the program. So we'd been working nonstop. All we did was play World of Warcraft. Both hit level 60 that summer. Very proud of that. That was the cap back then, by the way. Don't be like, oh, you only hit 60. It was the cap back then. And then wrote code and tried to get users. Now, we got that email from Paul 3 weeks in, and it said, just a couple sentences. It was like, you haven't launched yet. And that's either because you're trying too hard to make it perfect, or you're incompetent. Either way, you're hosed. It's like, damn, Paul, all right. That is exactly what we needed to hear, because Steve and I kind of took it a little personally. We were like, well, we don't think we're incompetent. We're going to launch something. And this was the something. It really is something. To be fair, I had already doodled the mascot. We just didn't quite have it up yet. But it's all in due time. But this was the first version. And you'll also notice something else from it, and that is I have a -1 karma score, and that's because Steve is a jerk. We're the only two people on the site. Like, I knew exactly who it was because he was sitting right across from me. He was just right there. I was like, thanks, Steve. Thanks. Just a jerk. Just a jerk. Just downvoted me. That's the reason we don't actually show negative karma scores, fun fact. It was because I was so dejected with Steve's -1. I was like, we just have to leave it at 0 and then let the people who have negative scores only see 0. But this apparently had been around for 6 months. It's a website called dig.com. It does not quite exist in this form today, but back then it was, with all candor and honesty, terrifying. Because Steve and I, again, just graduated from college, right? We just came out of UVA. We stumbled our way into Y Combinator. We were in a rented apartment in a suburb of a suburb of a suburb of Boston. And there we were. 2 weeks after we launched, I sent an email to Paul and Steve saying, meet the enemy. That was the subject line. Dig.com, the body. Because we did a terrible job of the competitive analysis. I take full responsibility. We were aware of, obviously, Slashdot. We were aware of Delicious. And they were both attacking very interesting problems with really interesting software. But we had no idea this site existed. And for the next 5 to 6 years, we would always be compared to them. Even though we were fundamentally different, whatever, we were always compared to them. And so when we learned about them, and I saw, holy cow, like, not only have they launched, and their site doesn't look quite as Spartan, but they launched with a celebrity founder who announced it on his own TV show. I mean, he didn't actually mention that it was his website, but to each his own. But you know, they're in the valley. They've got a ton of funding. Oh my goodness, we're hosed. Like, how could the two of us possibly compete with this? And again, advisors stepped in and said, do not care about your competition. Do not care for a minute about them, because they will not stop you, only you will. And that advice actually turned out to be rather prophetic if you learn the fate of Dig, because all of those sites just copied. They were also obsessed with this sort of valley fervor. They didn't build something that could sustain it. And one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be going all over the country and Canada is because last year I actually came through the heartland and actually brought a documentary crew and another bus to film a documentary. It's freely available, called Silicon Prairie. And we brought a bunch of reporters because we wanted to show off all of the internet economy that was happening all over the heartland of America, because we had just defeated SOPA and PIPA, and all the headlines said Hollywood versus Silicon Valley. And that was ridiculous, because it was Hollywood versus everyone, and everyone actually won. And so I wanted to make sure that we had really good evidence just to show anyone who asked, politician, journalist, just random person, the internet economy is alive and well and growing all over this country. And so please, 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 please do not ever get hung up on this notion that you need to be there to have success, that you need to be there in order to find what you need to find. You can go visit, the burritos are great, the investors are there, and they will write checks, but just take that money back. I mean, geez, you guys have the best internet in the country, so I don't need to tell you that, do I? And I am a little bitter about it, too. I'm a little jealous. But really, that is not the thing that should be on your mind. Now, you should also make a note. There are going to be ups and downs. There are going to be moments in any journey that are going to have pros and cons. This, for Reddit, was one of the most telling ones that not a lot of folks knew. About 4 months in, Google flew us out. Steve and I were there, sitting on a sofa there at the Googleplex, just a few months after we launched. And they wanted to talk about maybe an acquisition. They actually were really interested in seeing what would happen if they brought Reddit in, maybe modified YouTube comments with Reddit comments, trying to figure out different ways to perhaps use the software or assimilate it, I don't know. But they showed us a great time, and it was so encouraging, because again, we had just graduated from college, we had no idea what we were doing, and all of a sudden, we can have all the M&Ms we want, because Google's full of just free M&Ms. It was wonderful. It was a really great meeting. And then we went to another company called Yahoo, which had just done their amazing purple rebranding. It was a whole new company now, purple. Everything was new. And that meeting was a little different, because we came in, and an executive had invited us there, and the two of us are sitting there, and we talked about Reddit, and they cut us off pretty early, and he said, hold on, how much traffic do you guys have anyway? And we looked at each other, and well, we just launched, but a few thousand users, but it's growing week over week. Like, the signs are all pretty positive. This executive looks at us, and he's just like, you guys are a rounding error compared to Yahoo. What are you even doing here? We're like, damn, did you just invite us here to make fun of us? That's kind of a dick move, but I guess we should go. So needless to say, the meeting did not go well, and we left. And we went back home to Boston. We felt really good about that Google meeting, not so good about the Yahoo one. But the Yahoo meeting was actually really, really helpful. It was really, really helpful. And I don't name the executive, because there's nothing good that can come of that. He's actually still in the Valley, and I hope to meet him one day, because I want to thank him. Because what I did when I got back home was I printed out a piece of paper on my wall next to my desk that said just a few words: you are a rounding error. And I put it up there, and every morning I wanted to know exactly who we would be proving wrong. And I started adding stuff to that. Every blog post about what a bunch of idiots Steve and I were, everyone else just started adding it to the wall. And I tell you, no matter what you do, there are going to be haters. So love thy haters. Embrace them, eat them up for breakfast, like delicious waffles from the Waffle House. They're not a sponsor of this tour, but the more I think about it, the more I should have just called them up, but oh well. We're going to Georgia Tech in a little bit, so I'll try to pull some strings. But the point is, no matter what you do, there are going to be skeptics, there are going to be critics, and that's all well and good. That's just the reality of life. But please find ways to let that be your motivation. Don't let that be the thing that stops you. Don't let embarrassment, don't let thinking that, oh, I have no place, no reason to be doing this. Don't let the haters, don't let any of those things stop you. Also, side note, because we're not in the Bay Area, this is a 0. It's not a no, it's a 0, because that is the number of times TechCrunch wrote about Reddit. Until the day we got acquired. And then they were like, oh, could we get a story? It's like, where were you? Where were you for 60 months? It breaks my heart when I hear founders working so hard to get on the front page of TechCrunch. That has nothing to do with your company's success. Nothing. Let them keep doing what they do and keep ignoring so much of the awesome stuff that's happening. Because sometimes they will say things. And once they did start writing about us, they wrote things like this. And it was great because, again, it's just more for the wall. It's just more wallpaper, right? Now, it's all good. It's fine Because all over this country, people are building up their own Silicon blanks. Although I'm not terribly fond of the whole derivative of Silicon Valley thing, but so be it. They're building up internet communities, or communities of people doing amazing stuff on the internet. And as long as they're better than this, as long as they're better than the enemy, you know, the back button, you can win. As long as you can capture someone's attention, whether it's an app, whether it is a blog, whether it's a Kickstarter campaign, as long as you're better than a photo of my cat. And her name is Karma, and there are lots of photos of her on the internet. And fun fact, I did want to name her Upvote, but that was downvoted because my girlfriend has taste. That was downvoted. But you have to be better than a cat photo. If you can capture someone's attention, cat photos are an easy one to sort of make fun of because the internet is full of them. But the reality is, whatever idea you're trying to share with the world, only your mothers will be willing to give it a go. Only your moms are going to say, yeah, I'll take a look, I'll support that. You have to convince every other person that it is worth their time. And if you keep that approach with everything you produce, things are probably going to be okay. And there are going to be failures. There are going to be setbacks, absolutely. But time and time again, I get to encounter people almost every day who are doing what they want, who are actually reaching those maximum potentials of awesome in industries, not just building startups, but building careers for themselves based on their passions. And one of my favorite stories about this is about a failout from the University of Georgia. And this guy couldn't even finish 4 years at Georgia. He bounced around for a couple of jobs. All of his friends were just worried about him. His family was a little concerned. And then one day he came to them, he said, I have it all figured out. I am moving to New York City. And they were like, you don't even have a job. How are you going to live in one of the most expensive cities in the country? And he said, no. Got it all figured out. I don't have a job, but I'm going to take photos. Really? Really, you're going to take photos? That's your plan. That is your plan for living in New York. You don't even own a camera, they told him. And it's true, he didn't have a camera. He'd never taken a photo really before in his life. So he started, and he sucked at first. He was not a very good photographer. But remember, sucking, first step to being sort of good at something. So for years, he keeps working at it. And he starts telling stories along with the photos that he takes. And it's not long until he starts building an audience. And he starts forcing himself to work a little harder, to learn a little bit more every day and get a little bit better. And in the span of just a few years, that Georgia failout became Humans of New York, became a person who is arguably the most viewed photographer in the world right now. Millions of people see his photos every day. And it started with a humble Tumblr blog, and today he's got an empire. He's got people who are having their lives changed, reading his stories of other humans, other carbon-based life forms living in New York City. He also has a book that I'm pretty sure instantly debuted as a #1 New York Times bestseller. Like, here was someone who 3 years ago had no business being a photographer, who moved to a new city, who didn't even have a camera, who started working in a skill and tirelessly over time built up an audience and a following. And this is in photography, okay? That makes me happy. It makes me happy, like this cat, because I want to know that I live in a world where people can have this opportunity. Now, it is far from perfect. And that's actually part of the reason why I talk as much as I do about bringing internet access, because there are millions of Americans to this day who can't even get broadband because they live in rural America. There are millions more who can't get access to it because of some corporations that don't want to let them actually take charge of their own internets. And we still don't think of the internet as the utility that it is, but we're getting there. And then we still need to make sure people have the skills to make the most out of it. But these are things that so many amazing organizations are working toward. And look, we're getting towards a place where I really, really hope the internet can live up to its fullest potential. But it's on us to make sure. It's on us to make sure that more webcomic artists like Zach Wiener can make absurd comics like this, right? This would never have worked in a Sunday comic section next to Family Circus. Could you imagine that? Oh, no, that would upset some parents, right? But that's okay. He's got an audience of millions, and he runs this site from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He's built this over time, and he started out as a closed captioner. Zach was paying the bills, basically typing out things Snooki said. Think about that. Think about the waste of talent. But fortunately, I guess you could be a question whether Fortunately, he started publishing a comic, and fortunately the traction started happening. What's amazing is stories that are bubbling up are not just about hipsters in skinny jeans who live on the coast. This is Lester Chambers. He's a 72-year-old musician, member of the Chambers Brothers, who was basically flat out robbed for most of his music career because he signed some bad deals with record labels. I know it's shocking that record labels would sign bad deals with their artists, but it happens, I know. And unfortunately, he's been left nearly penniless. He was sleeping on the floor of his studio for the last few years. Again, this guy's 72 years old. And so he posted his story online. His son took this photo, put it on Facebook, and of course, like it's the internet, it went viral. And we opened up an exchange and talked him into doing a Kickstarter campaign. And within a few months, he had raised over $60,000 for an album. And it was an album for the first time in this man's life he actually wholly owned. He owned the entire album himself. And if you hear Lester, I saw him just 2 weeks ago in San Francisco, if you hear him talk about the internet, he sounds like he could be pitching you a startup. But this is a now 73-year-old musician who talks about it with the same kind of fervor because he's gotten a taste for what it can do. And again, it's still not perfect, but it is getting us closer to something. All right, now this is Zach Anner, who, if you don't know about, you need to take notice. All right, so a few years ago, his story went around the internet because he wanted to host a travel show. Now, Zach, by his own admission, has the sexiest of the palsies. It is cerebral palsy. And it's interesting because he is an incredible talent, a hilarious comedian. And for some reason, I can't remember the last time I saw anyone with cerebral palsy on TV, let alone hosting a show. But Zach had something to say, and he found a way to say it. And millions of people responded to it because this guy is talented. And now he's got a show on Soul Pancake, which you should all check out. It's called Have a Little Faith. And he has built an audience. He is making a living doing what he really wants. And in a pre-internet world, you can't even imagine it. And it's not just about business. It's not just about nonprofit. It's not just about art or comedy. It's also about philanthropy. Now, when a tornado ripped through Joplin just a few years ago, a public school teacher in Virginia saw what had happened and wanted to help. So she went to her computer, and she is an amazing woman, but has a full-time job as a teacher, is not, by her own admission, a technologist, but she knew enough with social media and Donors Choose to start building a campaign, to start raising awareness for what was going on in Joplin. And she was able to, in the span of weeks, raise over $500,000 for that community there, directly to the schools that she wanted to rebuild, directly helping all of those people, and then eventually flying out there herself so she could help these teachers help themselves, using this platform to fund their classrooms. These people all have existed in the past. These people all would have been just as awesome even 10 years ago. But the chances, the odds of them having the potential to reach that sort of maximum level for awesome would have been much, 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 much slimmer. And it makes me so much happier to know that we live in a world where these people can actually do this. And where over time, more and more of the traditional gatekeepers are starting to be affected, whether they like it or not. And what that means for all of us is hopefully more power and an ability to actually get our ideas to the world. And whether they are for business or for nonprofit or for activism or for politics or for art or for entertainment, I really do believe it is going to work towards making this world suck a little less. And that is really exciting. That is why I love the internet so freaking much. Because I want to knock this off of its pedestal. I don't speak French. I'll be the first to admit it. I don't know what it actually means. But in my mind, entrepreneurship, an entrepreneur, is someone who just has an idea and does it, who gets things done. And unfortunately, so much of our education system is geared around passing tests and avoiding failure. It's something we don't really talk about, and yet life is full of doing things that you're uncomfortable with, whether you're trying to put a rover on another planet for the first time in all of humanity, or whether you're just trying to help people find a flight or a hotel. You're going to be doing things that may not work out, but it's okay. And the sooner you can get yourself in a position where you're comfortable with that, the better. And at the end of the day, things like GPA really start to matter a lot less when you consider them against things like, what have you done? So I, for one, damn it. There we go. I still have no idea. If it's not obvious from the arrow, I still don't really know what I'm doing. I still don't. And please keep that in mind. Not just, oh, look, Alexis is ignorant and doesn't know what he's doing. But I mean, that's true. But know this, this worry, this concern that you may be too inexperienced, you've never done this thing before, oh no, but that's not just the way things should be. These are all opportunities for us to question that and actually consider whether or not perhaps we actually have something. We actually have something that we could try out. And I want to take this message everywhere. I want to take it all over the country. Those books are not to scale, because that would be terrifying. That would be awful. Oh, that'd be, I mean, and who could read them? Just totally impractical. And one of the things I hope all of you got, we had these postcards. Did you guys get postcards? Yes, excellent. Okay, so the postcards. We're gonna, hopefully, I know there's some young bloods in the audience. There's a way to get mail that happens without tubes. Just trust me. If you can remember what your physical mailing address is, write it on that postcard. It goes on the right side of the card. And then on the left side, put something that you want to do in the next few months. We're going to be on tour until the end of February. And at the end of the tour, at the start of March, we're going to go back to New York. And I'm going to have probably a giant sack full of these postcards. And I'm going to go mail them. I'm going to mail every single one of them back to all of you. And hopefully, you'll get this note from your past self. And you'll actually be able to kind of brush your shoulders off because you finally did that thing you wanted to do. It could be personal, it could be professional, it could be learning how to code, it could be learning French, I don't care. But this is the first step, and you are the only one who is going to be able to determine that, right? Because only you are going to be the one to actually force yourself to do this stuff, so you should be the one writing this postcard. So fill this postcard out at some point before the end of this conference, and then give it to me, and I will make sure to mail it back to you. All right, now, if you also want to be a part of this, like I said, I'm building a community here, so you can email me at join@myname.com. Because like I said, there is an opportunity now for all of us to hopefully determine the course of this wonderful thing called the internet. And we're discovering it right now. I am amazed by the fact that we are both capable of exploring this new frontier as well as creating it under our feet. Right? This is more than just discovering new stuff. This is also actually being able to build it. And that is, again, why writing code is so important. But I'm unfortunately talking to a bunch of people who pretty much have that message. Tell your friends, by the way. But seriously, what matters so much is that we take this opportunity right now to do this. And I hope we still have some time for Q&A, because I'm now on the page that just shows visual preferences. There you go. So thank you very much.
Alexis, we do have time for Q&A. Stick around, yeah. So yes, we do have time for Q&A. Anyone have any questions? We've got one in front. Yes, down in front.
You talked a lot about failure that you said, negative messages. When did you get to that point where you said, okay, I think we have something here, this is actually going to work out?
So the question was, you talked about a lot of the failure and a lot of the negative, a lot of the haters. When was the first time you actually felt like, hey, this might work? The first moment was maybe a month into Reddit when, Steve and I was still during that summer. It was the summer of Warcraft. And we had emailed 100 of our friends to try out the site, and 2 of them did. Which is actually a pretty good conversion rate, I feel like. And that clearly wasn't enough to keep it going. But eventually we kept going at it, kept trying to write to third-tier bloggers to talk about Reddit. This was before Twitter, of course. And finally, maybe a month in, we woke up one morning, used the site kind of just like any other user, just sort of just read it, didn't submit anything, didn't vote on anything, and it just worked. And along the way, we answered every feedback email. I found the first blog that actually wrote about Reddit. It was some random dude's, I think it was a TypePad blog. And Steve and I both commented on that post because we were so ecstatic that some random person we had never met before actually used our thing and then liked it enough to write something about it. The addiction of having actual users or customers is something that is insatiable because it is so fulfilling. Even as a little kid, the first time my GeoCities page broke 100 views, even though it was just me reloading, which I would learn later, it was, sad but true. No one wanted to see my Quake 2 fan page, who knew? But it was so fulfilling. And that's all to come back to say, part of the reason why we can't get enough of the sort of building mentality and doing mentality, especially in students or even younger people, is because once you get a taste of it, once you get a taste of knowing what it's like to create something and actually have some random person use it and hopefully like it, it doesn't go away. And once it finally clicked for us was when we knew hey, this product is actually working. It's not a total failure. We haven't wasted the last 2 months.
That's cool. Other questions? In the middle.
Yeah. How can we as Americans, actually, how can the world regain trust in American servers when it's clear the NSA does not care about our right to privacy? I don't know. This is something that we have to figure out. I mean, right now we have a kind of dysfunctional Washington, D.C. They're not really getting a lot done. What I hope comes out of this is an understanding. Actually, there's going to be a protest in D.C. on Sunday, tomorrow. What's today? Friday? Yeah, Saturday. I've been on a bus for a little while. On the 12-year anniversary of the Patriot Act, and it's called StopWatching.us. I hope what comes out of this is a discussion where we have enough people in government, specifically Congress, to actually write some laws to make it very, very clear that we as Americans believe in our Fourth Amendment rights to privacy in our home and in our mail. Again, the sort of dead tree mail. Because, right, if you want in, okay, due process, get a warrant, all right? It should be the exact same for digital space and digital mail. And for some reason, they're not, well, because not enough people in government understand this technology, that message has been disrupted, has been warped. But more and more Americans are coming to terms with this and realizing this and speaking out about it. And I hope that that's what's going to change it. Because if not, you're going to see many more nations looking elsewhere, because what matters is where those files are stored. And if it's not, I hate to say it about America, but if it's not a place where those secure files are secure, that's going to have real economic implications. So I hate to bring it back to the economics of it, because it's a privacy issue, but that's probably going to be a big part of what makes government finally wake up and change it.
I think there's a, yeah, right?
Thanks,
Good question. Was there a question back here? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to say, first of all, that dig always sucked.
Oh, thanks.
If Facebook is the new Friendster, is Reddit the new 4chan?
There will always be one. There will always be one 4chan. I mean, I know Chris pretty well, Moot. No, that's its own unique thing. I think there is something undeniable about the fact that all of these platforms are so, I don't want to say ephemeral, but you've seen so many come and go at this point. And look, the reason Facebook bought Instagram is because they were scared of Instagram becoming essentially the new Facebook in terms of the place people would go for photos of whatever random stuff people post. I think it's really interesting that Imgur now has 100 million unique visitors a month. Reddit has 80. So for some perspective here, Imgur is now a larger, at least from a unique standpoint, site. But when it comes to being this kind of like platform for online communities, I think where there's inevitably going to be something coming up. There's nothing quite like it in that, forum software has always existed. It was just always like a random PHP BB forum. It's just some random open source project that someone could run. And I think where we've seen so much growth has been overseas, people who are still using old forum technology to share links and have discussions that are now building a subreddit. I mean, the Pew report that just came out put Reddit is actually the most popular social media site among Hispanics in America. 11% of all Hispanics use it. It's more than Twitter, Facebook, all the rest. And we're seeing more and more, like, they're vast communities that are all in languages that I unfortunately don't know. So I think there's still a ways to go, but there's probably always someone drinking our milkshake, so to speak. I mean, that's the nature of innovation. And because we're open source, I at least feel good about knowing that, if we screw it up, people can learn from all the code that we leave behind.
We'll take two more. I think there was one over here. Yeah, in the front.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So this is about the influence of mentors. So Paul Graham obviously was very, very helpful. Paul Graham also gave some really terrible advice. He hated the alien. He hated the name. He wanted to call it like 360 Scope. He was like, you can't call it Reddit. It'll be poison to investors. Call it 360 Scope. Here's the thing. One of the best things that anyone can learn, sort of not too far from the whole doesn't know what he's doing, is that even the most brilliant, your mentors could be Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, like you could put a rock star team of mentors together, and they're going to be great. They're going to be really helpful. They're going to be really smart, but they're still not going to fundamentally understand what you are doing, your business, as well as you will, because you spend every waking hour thinking about it. And so actually, the best advice for mentors is obviously seek them out, whether it's at the university level or elsewhere, but also know that they're human too. And like sorting through people's advice is going to be one of the best skills you can actually learn as a founder or develop as a founder. So know that they are fallible. And at the end of the day, like, you know, the product speaks for itself. You know, if you build something that people actually want, like, who cares what, even if your mentor is like, that's a terrible idea, and then a month later you're like, oh look, it's growing 10% week over week. You know, she's going to be like, okay, all right, you got a good point, or he's going, yeah, okay. It's that sort of acceptance. But one of the other things to point out too, I think what is so amazing for me has been, I travel a ton. I've traveled a ton over the last 5 years, and especially since sort of leaving Reddit full time. And I have seen so much growth around startup communities all over the world, but especially all over the country. And so the amount of resources, the reason I'm so jealous of everyone who's in college right now is the resources that are available to you, the people who are available to you right now and are active and excited and helping are so much better, so much more vast than they were for us. So go be awesome. I'm just gonna be jealous. But hopefully you'll remember this and then tweet at me, and then I will take all the credit for helping you out.
All right, we'll do one more. And it was in the front right over there.
Yay. Was it a good comment? Was it a good response? Was it satisfying? Did you upvote it? Okay, good. They do smell great. Books smell amazing. Yeah. Totally non sequitur for everyone else here. But anyway. Mm-hmm.
I've seen where you went starting off at a young age, and that's really inspiring. And if I could just take away, if you could say one thing that you would advise someone in such a position, a young entrepreneur, what would the most helpful advice that
Wow.
It's quite the question. On the spot.
Jeez. I mean, oh man. Because now if it's anything I didn't put in the book, I'm going to feel really dumb for not putting it in the book. No, you know what? Actually, here's one. And this is good because it's not my advice. And I don't know whose it is. It's been quoted so many times. But you are the average of your 5 closest friends. And Drew Houston was the one who told me that. He's the founder of Dropbox. I don't think it's his. He's a very smart dude. But the point is, and that's not to say you should just ditch your 5 friends if they're lame and all they want to do is hang out and play video games, because then I'm like, oh, that was all my friends and that's all we do is play video games. But be aware of the fact that, especially if you want to be entrepreneurial, again, in the broadest sense, right? I'm talking to like art students who have never launched a Kickstarter campaign. I want them to meet up with a group of friends every week and just see where they're each at. Set goals for themselves to be like, we're each going to launch something by the end of this semester, and challenge each other and work together with each other. The people that you put around you are going to set your own standards for yourself, and sort of choose wisely. I know it sounds like almost like a Dare commercial, but really, like, you have an amazing opportunity, and I don't know if you're going to college, hopefully you're going to college, but like, surround yourself with interesting people who also challenge you and maybe have different perspectives than you do. But who all are also just essentially good people who are, excited to learn new stuff, who are curious. I think that's the thing. I've gotten to meet some amazing, brilliant, extremely successful people, and the most clear commonality between all of them is a relentless obsession with curiosity. See that? Yeah, Rover. See, it's all coming full circle. That is the thing. And I think that's going to make life interesting, because you're going to find yourself in the middle of a field and all of a sudden realize, like, this was a Civil War battlefield 150 years ago, and all of a sudden you're taking out your iPhone and learning a bunch of stuff. Like, that kind of relentless curiosity is something that is always going to be fun. It's always going to be stimulating. It'll probably help you a lot as an entrepreneur. Whew. Damn, it's putting me on the spot, man.